Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment, waiting for the room to fill up.
Bienvenidos a todos. Vamos a empezar en breve. Solo estamos esperando a que se llene la sala.
All right, welcome again. My name is Mika, and I am one of the co-directors at the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center.
Hola, bienvenidos de nuevo a todos. Mi nombre es Mika y soy una de los codirectores del Centro Cultural de Discapacidad de San Francisco.
And before we dive in, just a few access notes.
Y antes de empezar, algunas notas sobre el acceso.
If you'd like more personalized captions from Stream Text, you can go to dcc.page/captions.
Si quisiera acceder a subtítulos personalizados de Stream Text, puede hacerlo en dccdcc.page/captions, CAPTIONS, y se puede encontrar en la caja de mensaje.
I'm going to go through the instructions in English first, and we'll have Spanish interpretation right after for this next part.
Ahora voy a repasar primero las instrucciones en inglés y después escucharemos interpretación al español justo después.
So we're delighted to present this event in ASL, in Spanish, and in English. And we have already activated the language interpretation mode for English and Spanish. Some instructions: if you are on a computer, click on the world icon that says interpretation at the bottom right of your Zoom video, and then select English or Spanish. If you're on a tablet or smartphone, touch the screen for the options to appear, then touch the three dots that say More at the top or bottom right of your Zoom window, select Language Interpretation, select your language, and then touch Done. If the dots say More don't appear on your smartphone, swipe your finger from right to left across the other icons at the very bottom of the screen until they appear. If you do not select a language channel, you will not be able to hear the interpreter. Everyone ready? Please select a language channel.
Hey, estamos encantados de presentar este evento en lenguajes de señas estadounidense, español e inglés. Y la función de interpretación ya está activada para acceder a la interpretación al inglés y al español. Si está usando una computadora, puede hacer clic en el icono de globo de mundo terráqueo que dice interpretación en la parte inferior hacia la derecha de su ventana de Zoom. Y a continuación, seleccione inglés o español. Y si está en una tableta o smartphone, puede tocar la pantalla para que aparezcan las opciones. Puede tocar los tres puntos donde dice más en la parte superior o inferior de su pantalla. Seleccionar interpretación de idiomas. Seleccionar su canal de idiomas y luego tocar listo. Si los puntos que dicen más no aparecen en su smartphone, puede deslizar el dedo de derecha a izquierda por los otros iconos de la parte inferior de la pantalla hasta que aparezcan. Y si no seleccionas un canal de idiomas, no podrás escuchar a la interpretación. ¿Todos listos? Entonces estamos activando a la interpretación en este momento. Por favor, seleccione su canal de idioma.
And if anyone is needing some extra help navigating this, please use the Q&A function, or you can email access@disabilityculturalcenter.org, and we'll do our best to help you.
Y si alguien necesita más ayuda, puede usar la función de preguntas y respuestas o enviar un correo electrónico a access@disabilityculturecenter.org y haremos todo lo posible para ayudarle. Y ese correo electrónico lo pueden encontrar también en la caja de mensajes.
Right, I'll just give people another moment just to make sure everyone's connected, and then we'll be starting simultaneous interpretation. All right. So today's program is a Zoom webinar. So it's like you're watching a TV show with our guests, and the DCC team will use the chat function for sharing access information and other important links. If you'd like to participate, you can use the emoji buttons, and we have a Q&A space that you can use for questions, but you can also use to share comments. And if you'd like to access that space after the event, you can also email access@disabilityculturalcenter.org. Alrighty, on to the panel. We're so happy to be collaborating with Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network, for this panel in our Care Work series on domestic labor and liberation. They have served as important leaders in thinking about this intersection, and we're really grateful to learn from the incredible panelists that they've helped assemble today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our fabulous moderator, Britt, the California lead home care organizer for Hand in Hand. Thanks, Britt.
Thank you so much, Mika, and thank you to everyone for being here today. As Mika stated, my name is Britt Hernandez-Wilson, and I am Zooming to you from Oakland, California, which is on the unceded land of the Ohlone people. This land has been cared for, stewarded, and lived on for thousands of years by Indigenous communities, and I encourage you to take a moment wherever you are and reflect and acknowledge the Indigenous land that you occupy. I also want to provide a visual description. I am a mixed race Black and brown person with dark brown curly hair. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, sitting in my wheelchair. Behind me is a wall with a piece of artwork on it. My pronouns are she, her. And again, I'm the California lead home care organizer for Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network. I am myself also a disabled employer and have navigated systems to manage my care. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Hand in Hand, we are a national network of domestic employers, people who hire nannies, house cleaners, and home care attendants. Our mission is to build a just and caring economy where care work is valued and those who provide it are treated with dignity and respect. We organize employers to show up for the rights of domestic workers, advocating for fair wages, sick times, better working conditions, so much more. But we're not just fighting for workers' rights. We're demanding long-term public investments in care for families, people with disabilities, seniors. And our work is about ensuring that care is recognized as essential and that all of us, workers, employers, can live with dignity, fairness, and support. We're so grateful to be in collaboration with the Disability Cultural Center on this panel as a part of their Care Work series, where we'll be discussing the intersection of domestic labor, care, love, and liberation. Today, we have an incredible group of panelists who will share their perspectives on the crucial role that care work plays in our communities and in our movements. As Mika stated, please feel free to share your questions and thoughts in the question and answer box as we go. And we will have time at the end to answer some of those questions. And I wanted to set the tone for our conversation today. The intention of this space is to be together, to learn from each other, to unpack some difficult truths, to explore how we can build a more just world for all workers, for all people, especially those who are in the domestic care role. We're going to be grounding this conversation in the history of care work, which has deep roots in the legacy of enslavement and colonialization. Domestic work has long been undervalued and exploited, often regulated to people who are pushed to the margins of society. This work is done primarily by women of color, immigrants, queer, and disabled folks. This work is essential, and yet it's still not treated with the respect and dignity that it deserves. But we know that care work is not about charity. It's not about doing someone else a favor. It's political work. It's about survival, yes, but it's also about justice, solidarity, love. And when we look at care work through this lens, when we recognize that this work is the foundation of every other system in our society, we begin to see the fullness of its power, the fullness of our power. Today, as we talk about care, we must remember that the fight for care work is and will always be tied to every other movement for justice. The fight for racial justice, for immigrant rights, for disability justice, the fight for labor justice, transgender justice, the fight to control our body minds, so much more. These are all connected. I wanted to share a few examples to illustrate this interconnectedness, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to share one. But there's so many more, and I encourage you to uplift those in the Q&A box. In May 1935, a group of unemployed disabled New Yorkers formed the League of the Physically Handicapped to demand an end to job discrimination under New Deal programs. When they learned that this group, called the Work Progress Administration, deemed disabled people as unemployable, they launched a sit-in at a relief office that lasted around 90 days. Many of the disabled protesters had prior ties to labor organizing, and on the second day of their sit-in, they sent a message to a nearby communist rally that was going on to ask for help. And within hours, dozens of labor and ally members showed up to picket outside in solidarity. And this cross-movement pressure forced officials to negotiate. They eventually agreed to create positions for disabled workers, and this was a landmark victory. Was one of the first times that direct action from the labor movement and the disabled movements joined together. This is an example that highlights how disabled rights, how labor, how care work has always been a form of resistance, a way to challenge systems that devalue certain lives and to build communities based on mutual aid and solidarity. And this work is deeply human work. Again, always been about resisting exploitation and honoring the interdependence that is us, that is our world, and embodying what it means to live in body minds that break the narrow mold of normal. So today, we're not just discussing what's broken, right? We're talking about how we can transform it, how we can build a world where care is understood as this exchange, where the dignity and humanity of care workers is recognized, where they're seen, heard, valued, felt, loved. This is about creating a world where the labor of care, which sustained us sustains us all is acknowledged as central to our collective freedom and liberation. Whew. So with that, let's dive in. Let's hear from these incredible panelists who have lived experience and have found ways to fight back. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of this journey. To start, we're going to hear from each panelist as they introduce themselves. They'll share their name, their pronouns, and a little bit about their connection to care and care work. Let's start off with Guadalupe, then we'll go to Cecilia and Maria, and we have about 3 minutes each.
Buenas tardes, gracias primero por la oportunidad de estar en este espacio. Mi nombre es Guadalupe García, mis pronombres son ella, she, her, hers. Soy una orgullosa hija de padres indígenas, zapotecas. Mucha de mi familia han trabajado limpiando casas en México y aquí en Los Ángeles. Y tengo la dicha de manejar el programa de Mujeres en Acción de Trabajadoras del Hogar en IDEPSCA desde hace aproximadamente 3 años y tengo trabajando, organizando con la comunidad jornalera y trabajadoras del hogar por más de 10 años. Gracias por la invitación.
Thank you so much, Guadalupe. This is Brittany speaking. Cecilia?
Hey y'all, can you hear me? Awesome. Hi everyone, I'm Cecilia. I use they, them pronouns. I am a white gender fluid person in my late 20s. I have short hair that's kind of light brownish, a little curly on top. I'm wearing a purple t-shirt with a screen print that I made on it. And behind me are a bunch of plants that I have no credit, I can't take any credit for maintaining. They're gorgeous, but I'm in my friend and mentor Patty's house right now, so I can't take credit for that. I am a sibling caregiver. Primarily, I have disabilities that are mostly invisible, and my primary relationship to care began when I was little, caring for my younger sister who has a developmental disability called Prader-Willi syndrome. Also, interpreters, please interrupt me if I start to speak too fast. That's something that is important to me. And I also want to flag that I value speaking in plain language and will attempt to do that to keep what I'm saying as accessible as possible. Yeah, so I have been doing access work with my younger sister who has 24-hour care needs since I was really young. I am the oldest of 2 siblings. My youngest brother is trans, and my community growing up was all trans folks and or neurodiverse folks and developmental disability folks. I have a number of other chosen family siblings who are also trans and neurodiverse, and yeah, have navigated education systems and healthcare systems alongside both of those communities my whole life. As a direct care provider, I have worked mostly in developmental disability community and with friends who use power chairs. I think when we talk about care work, it's really important to introduce like which contexts you have worked in because it is such a broad type of field. Like if you've worked in a giant nursing facility, your experience is super different than working with friends who are scraping by finding their own care workers. If you've worked in developmental disability with non-speaking, quote unquote, high needs folks, you have a really different experience from working with folks who really just need someone to like do basic tasks that they can describe really clearly to you. So yeah, I also, when COVID first hit, I was a direct care provider for 2 queer and trans friends of mine who use power chairs, and I was on an all trans care team that was very high quarantine for the first 1.5 years of the pandemic, and that in addition to doing work with my sister, right, like taught me a lot about the ways that that folks have to struggle to stay living in community, and the like level of risk and trust that is required to do real care work that keeps our people safe and in their homes. Um, and yeah, that being on that care team showed me that a whole different world of care was possible than I had known prior. In this like queer, trans-friendly in-home care team. And so then after having that experience, my sister was experiencing some health crises, and I moved home, moved in with her, and helped transfer her care to a handpicked team that we recruited and trained together. And that's really transformed her experience and her health, both physical and mental health. So yeah, I've seen the power of like when care teams work really well and what that does for both caregivers and care recipients. And I have had the privilege of being in relation to a lot of people who've been innovating that. I've supported a number of other friends after co-founding that 24-hour care team with my sister. I've supported a number of other friends in setting up their own in-home care teams too. And yeah, like just have a lot of really amazing people who've taught me how to make teams that are actually sustainable and mutually beneficial to providers and recipients. And yeah, that's a little intro about me.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I can't wait for this panel. Okay, Maria.
Hi, hello, hello, hello. I am so thrilled, excited, and grateful to be sharing space with you all. I think that everybody in this space is just absolutely amazing. So thank you for making it possible. My name is Maria Palacios. I am an indigenous, light-skinned, Latin American woman. My pronouns are she, her. I am right now, and thank you for modeling the visual description because I often forget. I am on my bed. I see you nodding. That happens to me too. I forget. I am sitting on my bed, and behind me is just my headboard. But I want to point out my unfinished painted wall. Part of it is white, and part of it is kind of like brown. So that's like, yeah, we started with unfinished. So that's the story of my life. Anyway, I come to you from the lands of the Acoquisa peoples, and also known as Houston, Texas, and Harris County, which is where I reside. And I'm also coming to you today in a body that is hurting. And so my access needs may require me to like shift my weight. You're going to see me moving. And also I have dogs that occasionally bark in an obnoxious manner. Ah. They're so smart. They understand everything I say. So I was just going to say that if they bark too loudly, I may mute myself so I can yell and tell them to shut up. And hopefully that works. So those are my access needs. I am with Sins Invalid. We are a disability justice, performance art, movement building organization. I have been performing with since 2007. And since about 4 years ago, I have been part of their staff as their Spanish language community organizer. My personal relationship with care work, I feel, first of all, and first and foremost, comes from being a disabled woman and living in a disabled body that many, 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 many times requires care. Care that must come often from the non-disabled world. Care that throughout my life has come with a lot of guilt because of ableism. When you are disabled, we are often led to believe that our needs and our need for care is a burden. In fact, we are very privileged, those of us who live here in the United States, because many other parts of the world do not have care work as we understand it. We don't even, like before we started, one of the interpreters asked me, what would be the best term for attendant, like the word attendant. And it kind of caught me by surprise, simply because culturally speaking, caring for disabled people is a burden that falls on the family. We do not have a system that even makes us think of the possibility of care work as something that may come from outside of the family, as a right, as something that we can access and deserve, So as a disabled person, my relationship with care work comes with a lot of oppression and ableism and a lot of layers of oh God, of so many lies that we have been forced to believe because of capitalism. The non-disabled world tends to think that disabled people cannot be caregivers, that we are only needy bodies that require others to do things for us, that we are the ones who need to be lifted, that we are the ones who need to be fed, that how could somebody in a disabled body mind provide care work? Well, as an example, I care for a loved one with dementia in my life. I care for a loved one with mental illness. I care for an elderly parent. I take care of a child. And all these people I mentioned depend on me for their care and their survival. So care is so interconnected and there's so many facets of it. And I absolutely love the way that this panel is being brought together for us to talk about those different aspects of care work, because we all may exist in physical bodies, but our physical experience of care and care work and oppression is so different. And so therefore, our individual experience and wisdom plays a major role in the way that the world around us operates and understands how care work and its various intersections and layers work together. So anyway, thank you so much. I am, super excited. Can't wait to keep going. Back to you, Britt.
Yes, thank you, Maria. Thank you all the panelists. I'm so excited. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first question is really at the heart of our discussion. Care work has been essential for survival throughout history, as we've spoken a bit about, particularly for, marginalized folks. So the question is, what does care work as liberation mean to you? And we'll start with Maria.
Sorry, I was like trying to hit unmute, and then all of a sudden my screen is like flashing like, should you unmute yourself? And I'm like, I'm trying. Care work as liberation. When I think about care work itself is part of liberation. We have to take care of ourselves and each other in order to find that liberation as we may define it. But specifically, when I think of care work and our disabled lives, and when I think of liberation and care work specifically, the one thing that comes to mind is how, to us as disabled people, care work often means that we have to keep fighting for our lives with everything we got, that we don't get a break most of the time, that our need for care and our right to receive care and our right to also be recognized as givers and contributors and capable people and worthy of existence, it's often compromised by ableism. So when I think about care work, I think about all of those things. I think about all the things that get in the way to us receiving care. I think of how little money attendants are being paid, and the immensity of the job that they have to do, how we as disabled people depend upon non-disabled help to survive, and how this non-disabled help often comes attached with so many clauses and how the non-disabled world makes us jump through loops and hoops just to receive care that we deserve, that we are entitled to. So those are some of the things that come to mind when I think about care. But I also think that to disabled people and really to everybody, care goes beyond basic care. We must look at it as taking care of each other and constantly reminding one another of our humanity. Because ableism is going to constantly be telling disabled people that we don't deserve to live. And I'm not exaggerating. So when we talk about care work, it really means survival. It really, really does. Survival and liberation, because we must liberate ourselves from the oppression of ableism, from the way that disability is being seen as a punishment, as something bad, as something that, Chiwi. See, I told you that my dogs are very opinionated. But yes, so all those things come to mind when I think about care work and liberation. It means collective survival. It means cross disability, dreaming and envisioning and organizing. And it means all the different things that disability justice brings together. It means our wholeness coming into play. It means also constantly being exhausted from having to educate the world about our rights and our needs. So care work in some sense, when I think about it and I think of us as disabled people in care work, it is exhausting to constantly have to fight for our survival. So I'll leave it at that. Just my dog.
Oh, Maria, a whole sermon. I was eating everything up because yes. And when you're like reminded of our humanity, I'm like, yeah, like this being in this disabled body might also remind other people of their humanity too, right? Like, and also how these systems disable us. Set up to, Cecilia.
Yes, I agree with all of that. And I also think, well, for me, the care work in my experience is a space or a site where either liberation work is happening or people are being duped and sold out of liberation. Like they're being tricked and told what they're receiving as care, but it's actually exacerbating their disablement, or in more extreme cases, just like really abusive and guys as care. That's unfortunately what a lot of institutions, especially from the communities that I come from, like developmental disability folks, so many nonverbal friends, so many folks who are in segregated public school classrooms where there's no oversight are being told that what they're receiving is care, when in reality it is driving up their various disabilities that are impeding them from living the lives they want, and they're being told like, this is good, this is what you're supposed to want, and so I think care work is like a compass, where it's like in that space you either know what you're getting is liberation work, is like, for me, liberation work is when we're moving together in a way that is making impossible things happen, impossible things possible, not just possible, like joyful and fun and like easeful, right? Like I have friends who, my sister uses a colostomy tube and she can't bathroom without the assistance with other people. And so for me, like real care work is like making bathrooming easeful and fun and like a non-issue and not the center of our conversation, right? Like we are living full lives and I can do this task that she can't do and she can do other tasks that I can't do, and we just move together. And in the process of moving together, you redefine what you basically like raise your damn standards, right? Like you redefine what is possible. And it's the same feeling like, I don't know. I feel like coming from IDD community and trans community, it's like there's so many reference points I think that any marginalized community has for that feeling when you like know what the work you're doing is like freedom work or not. It's like if you're a trans person and you like meet a trans elder for the first time and you learn about hormones, you learn about options for your body to like be free. And you're like, wait a minute, I didn't even know my life could get good like that. And like if you're, you know, someone who didn't know about a certain kind of assistive device, all of a sudden you get oxygen, all of a sudden you get a certain, like something that, you know, enables you to do something that you've been wanting to do. It's like, wait a minute, I'm raising my standards right now. And I want to, and like if you have relationships that are real trust, it allows you to do things that makes things possible, and it transforms the caregiver and the recipient in that process. So in that way, I just think care work is like the embodied microcosm of liberation work, like on bigger levels, like all, I mean, any marginalized community or movement for making the world, any anti-violence movement, right, has disabled people in it by definition. Like, so at any marginalized or frontline community that's resisting state violence in any form, like, is already doing care work every day to survive, whether it's paid or not. And I think like having a care strategy that enables people to do care that's generative, that's mutually beneficial, is literally what either like opens the floodgates for, I don't know, in my experience, a lot of disabled folks who have experienced a lot of state violence or different forms of violence, like they know best what freedom means, like what it looks like to not have that violence around no more, because it's in their bodies. They know it. It's like just like literally they know where to go. It's like if I have no idea what's going on in Palestine or the Congo, I have no way to tell you what liberation means, and the government can tell me, hey, you know what? Actually, if we bomb them a bunch, that's gonna set them free. Like we're helping right now. And I could be like, okay, yeah, if I didn't know any better. But if I talk to people who do know what's going on and like I build a relationship of like disabled wisdom is literally the compass to a world without violence in it. So, and the only way to have disabled people like do the stuff they want to do every day and like be the leaders in our movement spaces that we need is to like do care work well and not make like 95%. I have so many brilliant disabled friends, like literally 90% of their energy is going towards like, who's gonna help me bathroom tomorrow? How am I gonna shower tonight? Crap, my caregiver's sick. The state just cut all my funding. What, like, you know, if that much of your brain space is going towards that, like, so I think it, for me, care work is like the work that makes the most sense in working towards liberation. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Keep going. We'll go
Oh,
back.
Cecilia. Thank you. Ah, yeah. Guadalupe.
Gracias. Wow. Totalmente de acuerdo con lo que María y Facilia acaban de compartir. Un paréntesis, tuve problemas técnicos antes de entrar a este panel y estaba tan preocupada y nerviosa de que no pudiera entrar. Entonces, me disculpo porque no empecé como usualmente hubiera hecho, pero durante mis próximas intervenciones voy a tratar de compartir más información de quién soy y qué es lo que hago. Respondiendo a la pregunta, en mi experiencia trabajando con trabajadoras del hogar, escuchando sus historias, asistiéndolas cuando ellas comparten que han sido víctimas de robo de salario, de violencia laboral, de situaciones que como trabajadoras, mujeres, migrantes, son no solamente un reto para ellas, pero impacta también en sus familias. Para mí, la liberación significaría que a esas trabajadoras actualmente se les reconozca como una industria. Lamentablemente, trabajadoras del hogar, el trabajo que hacen, el tipo de trabajo que hacen por muchos años históricamente no se ha visto como una industria oficialmente. Y eso incluso lo vemos en la historia, cuando se comenzaron a crear las leyes, las trabajadoras del hogar fueron dejadas, ¿verdad? No se incluyeron. Y esto tiene raíces racistas, porque las trabajadoras del hogar en ese entonces eran mayoritariamente mujeres negras esclavas. Y en la actualidad sabemos que la mayoría de las trabajadoras que hacen trabajo en casas privadas, ¿verdad? Son mujeres migrantes, mujeres de color. Entonces, venimos arrastrando históricamente, ¿verdad? Dejarlas fuera de cualquier protección. Y aunque actualmente hay protecciones laborales para trabajadoras del hogar, no tienen las mismas protecciones que otras industrias. Entonces, encima de todo eso, ellas viven explotación, abuso. Y encima de todo eso, ¿verdad? Si le damos vuelta a la página, se les considera esenciales. Y un ejemplo fue cuando COVID comenzó, las trabajadoras del hogar fueron de esa población que no paró de trabajar, que se dedicaron a cuidar hogares, a cuidar personas, inclusive cuando había COVID en los hogares, las obligaban a ir a limpiar y desinfectar con cloro sin diluir, porque la preocupación era que en ese hogar no hubiera o no se expusieran al COVID, pero se hizo a costa de la salud de muchas trabajadoras. Escuchamos muchas historias de trabajadoras que decían, yo me enfermé de COVID en el trabajo, mis manos se me lastimaron por usar tanto cloro, porque no les daban equipo de protección, no les enseñaron cómo hacer su trabajo de una manera segura. Entonces, a mí me encantó lo que dijo Facilia cuando dijo, hay que conocer la realidad, ¿verdad? Si no conocemos la realidad de las trabajadoras del hogar, no vamos a saber cuáles son los retos, cómo podemos trabajar juntas, ¿verdad? Juntas, en decir, se les contrata para ir a trabajar, pero hay que reconocer que hay una relación de empleada y empleado. Y lamentablemente todavía hay personas que no identifican a ellos mismos como empleadores. Entonces, para mí, el reconocerlas como trabajadoras esenciales, pero respetando sus derechos, asegurando que tuvieran protecciones de salud y seguridad laboral, dar el valor que ellas merecen al trabajo que hacen y además pagarles salarios dignos. Es algo que no solamente va a beneficiarlas a ellas, pero es una relación en donde si yo aseguro, si una persona que contrata a una trabajadora del hogar asegura que ella hace su trabajo de manera segura, que no usa productos tóxicos, su hogar también va a estar protegido. La familia con la que ella va a trabajar también va a estar protegida, ¿verdad? Entonces, ¿cómo podemos asegurar que haya entonces una relación saludable, una relación donde no pensamos como los capitalistas que solamente miran números, qué es lo más barato para mí y un beneficio a costa de la salud de quien yo estoy contratando, ¿verdad? No las miran como trabajadoras, es una propiedad para ellos que les va a ayudar a generar, a mantener un hogar limpio, a cuidar personas, ¿verdad? A un costo muy bajo. Entonces, para tener una relación sana de empleados y empleadores, se necesita conocer la realidad de ambas partes. Que la persona que ellos van a contratar también sepa cuáles son sus necesidades, ¿verdad? Si hablamos también con personas con discapacidades, ¿cómo podemos asegurar también que esa trabajadora sepa de qué manera puede hacer su trabajo bien? Y entonces ambas partes va a haber una relación de trabajo más segura, pero especialmente mucho más digna. Gracias.
This is Britt speaking. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. I'm so happy like that you are here to help uplift not only your experiences, but also especially the worker experience. And I cannot wait to continue to learn from you and everyone else. And all of you are highlighting that care work is never just about one thing, right? It's always shaped by the layers of our identities, of our histories, and the systems of power that intersect in all of our lives. Understanding how disability justice intersects with racial justice, immigrant justice, trans justice, worker justice, all the things, right, is really essential to how we approach care work. And also care work's political potential, right? This movement that's also happening. And so the next question is, what does it mean to understand that all these movements are connected, right? And why is it important that we don't see these movements or, struggles as being separate, as being in silos? And so for time, I am going to ask panelists to be maybe a bit more brief than they had originally planned. And I appreciate that. And first up is Cecilia.
I got you, Brittany. I'll be quick. First, I just want to say I think it's important that we break down the binary of like disabled care recipients and non-disabled care providers, because that's just like literally I've never seen that be a thing. For instance, the care team that I co-manage with my sister is like uh uh collage, right? She has 24-hour care. Her team is all like queer trans folks who have experienced lots of different types of violence in their lives. And it's like a mosaic of cross disability solidarity and interdependence, right? Like my sister's like, this rocks. I employ a lot of my friends and now they have stable jobs. A lot of them were working public facing service jobs, couldn't transition. Then we're able to join a like trans friendly workspace. We're able to transition. Their mental physical health is getting better. And they're able to like do projects like be musicians or like do community organizing that's really important. My sister sometimes jokes that she runs like a queer support group. Like she's like always talking people through whatever stuff they're going on, right? Like we've worked our asses off to build this. Like her last agency she was with, she was breaking stuff and they were labeling her in ways that were going to cut her off from ever getting in-home care. Because if you are labeled as too difficult, no agencies will take you, right? So these are the stakes that are at play every single day in our care relationships. If you have a care provider who gaslights you, sets you off, you break a window, they report you, you get swept away and you get institutionalized, like unless someone else helps. So I just want to not talk along the lines of non-disabled care providers and disabled care recipients, because actually real care work is like needs conscious cross disability solidarity embodied in real time and adjusting and adapting to people's fluctuating needs and bodies. But okay, I want to answer the question really fast, Brittany, I promise. What does it mean to understand our movements as not existing in silos? I think that literally, if we don't see how we are facing the same enemy as disabled folks receiving care and as care providers, mostly working class folks who are also being denied qualities of life and rights to live the lives they want to live, like we literally just won't win. I think care strategy is the key to winning better lives. I think that the only way to build movements strong enough to beat like exploitative forces and fascism and imperialism is to have cross-issue, cross-movement, cross-disability solidarity that is tight. And also the barriers are really obvious. Like as care workers, we can't get our rights and our needs met because a lot of us are in non-union private agencies that silo people away. A lot of us have never even met our bosses. Like anyways, the same forces that isolate and create obstacles to collective bargaining, that's the key actually. Collective bargaining is really hard for both care providers and care recipients. And that makes it really, really hard to like organize with people with shared situations as you, because it's intentionally been pushed into for-profit institutions that profit both off of care worker exploitation and care recipient exploitation. Put more of these, you know, kids who age out, IDD kids who age out of foster care into these homes with fewer staff that are getting disabled. Also, I don't think we've brought up very much how care work is disabling, right? Most people who do my work get back injuries or are hesitant to get the label, to identify with the label of disability because it bars you from employment. Most people who are doing care work are getting a wage so they can subsidize their non-paid care work for their mom or sending money back home to a different country or whatever it is, right? Like it's all of our movements are literally playing out on the day-to-day in care work spaces. And so unless we recognize like, no, this is the work. Care work isn't this side thing I do, and then I go like figure out how to like work for my people separately. It's like, no, this is where it's like playing out day to day. If we're building solidarity, if we're like basically screwing each other over and not standing with each other. And so, yeah, I think last tiny point is just that I think those connections are like more visible today than like ever before. Like our country is passing like record level military budgets and like cutting Medicaid and like terrorizing people so that, you know, kidnapping immigrants and student dissenters and making people terrified to leave their homes because mass disablement and terror is so profitable. Like getting people to not organize and like yeah, just like it's such a for-profit industry to enact this violence. Like war profiteers like to line their pockets, private healthcare industries like to line their profits over mass disablement. And like care workers are the people, working class care providers are the people who are at the forefront of that, and disabled people are the people at the forefront of that. So that's all.
That's all you say. I feel like you have expanded my universe in understanding, and I'm very thankful, and I would love to talk more about that care strategy that you were getting at. That is as a heart of what you see Facilia as being this form of resistance. So if we could table that, that'd be great. And Guadalupe, like if you could come and share your answer, that'd be great.
Gracias. Desde mi perspectiva como migrante, ¿verdad? Y organizadora, especialmente enfocada en el área laboral, siento que este es el primer espacio, honestamente, donde yo veo que estamos conectando y hablando de cómo se conectan estas luchas. En ningún otro espacio donde organizamos a nivel de derechos laborales he escuchado que se incluya el tema de capacitismo, ¿verdad? Anticapacitismo. Tuvimos un excelente taller de nuestros compañeros de hand in hand, de mano a mano, sobre anticapacitismo, ¿verdad? Con la Coalición Estatal de Trabajadoras del Hogar. Y esta es la segunda vez que estoy en un espacio donde hablamos y entendemos que hay una relación. Entonces, nuestras luchas están conectadas, definitivamente. La cuestión es que tenemos que conocer nuestras realidades y encontrar ese punto donde nos conectamos, ¿verdad? Un ejemplo lo tenemos ahora mismo con el clima político. Estamos viviendo en una administración y un sistema que está criminalizando y atacando especialmente comunidades que han sido históricamente marginalizadas, migrantes, personas con discapacidades, comunidad LGBTQ, trabajadores de color, trabajadores de bajos ingresos, ¿verdad? La primera bandera roja la vimos el primer día durante una de las primeras órdenes ejecutivas cuando se habló de eliminar programas como el de diversidad, equidad e inclusión. Y fue entonces donde empezamos a mirar que no eran solamente unos específicos grupos que estaban levantándose y empezaron, ¿verdad?, a decir, esto no está bien, esto no está justo. No está impactando solamente a una comunidad, pero a muchas comunidades. Y también quisiera recalcar que el ser criminalizados y atacados, lamentablemente, ¿verdad?, no es algo nuevo. Esta administración lo está haciendo más visible. Y entonces, dentro de lo malo, hay que buscar esa oportunidad que tenemos ahora de identificar dónde se conectan nuestras luchas. Facilia estaba hablando ahorita de los recortes de Medicare y es un tema bien importante, ¿verdad? Fue un gran logro que en California trabajadores inmigrantes que no tienen un estatus migratorio tengan acceso a este programa, porque tener acceso a salud es un derecho humano. Entonces, recientemente se dio acceso a muchos trabajadores migrantes, a mucha comunidad migrante, y ahora están en riesgo de perder ese beneficio, ¿verdad? O ese derecho. Si esos recortes se llegan a llevar a cabo, no solamente va a afectar a trabajadores, no solamente va a trabajar a la comunidad migrante, va a impactar a las comunidades que requieren de este programa, ¿verdad? Para atender, para tomar terapias, personas con discapacidades que dependen de este programa, no solamente para tener asistencia médica, pero también cuidado personal. ¿Y quiénes hacen el cuidado personal? Trabajadoras del hogar también, ¿verdad? Entonces, es un círculo, tenemos que hablar más de estos temas, identificar cuál es nuestro punto medio. Sé que también muchas veces, lamentablemente, porque no hay la capacidad en el tiempo, ¿verdad?, de organizar y de trabajar más en conjunto con otras organizaciones o en otros espacios, lamentablemente no se lleva a cabo. Pero hay que ver dónde está el punto donde podemos conectarnos y buscar maneras que podemos ir en esta lucha juntos, porque de lo contrario, especialmente en este momento político, va a ser muy difícil. Gracias.
Absolutely. Thank you, Guadalupe. All so connected. And we're going to get to that action piece in the next question. So I'm so excited. But I'd like to invite Maria to come on and to answer this question as well.
Oh my gosh. Yes, and 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 yes to everything that Facilia and Guadalupe said, because, I mean, I don't want to repeat. Everything is so connected when we're talking about care work. And when we talk about disability justice, we realize how connected everything is, right? Especially when we talk about intersectionality. And I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to repeat everything that you both said, because they're also my truths, you know, and you both covered on so many important aspects of care work and the oppressions that we face. So I don't want to repeat that, but I do want to say that when we talk about care work and as it relates to intersectionality, we already know that there's no intersection of life without disabled people, right? I mean, at all. I have challenged people to like try to give me and try to tell me, try to find a space, a single space in society, a single intersection of life that has no disabled people. And we know that's not possible, right? So caring for each other and caring for our survival is absolutely necessary and absolutely connected to disability justice. And how the, you know, when we talk about intersectionality, our various identities, how they overlap, and how the care that we receive, depending on what identities are being seen or identified by the non-disabled world, you know, privilege is real. And the reality is that the more disabled we may seem to the world, the less care we are going to have. We're going to have to fight more for that care, you know? So when we talk about those intersections and overlapping with each other. And also something about the question, I don't remember exactly the way that the question was framed, but in my notes, because I'm reading notes and I don't remember exactly what I was telling myself. Don't you hate that? I'm like, oh yeah, this is perfect. I'll say this for it. And then I'm like, what the fuck was I saying? But anyway, one thing that I wrote here is how our survival as disabled people and how we care for each other reminds me so much about the wisdom and the survival of trees. Yeah, trees. You know, the way how their underground root system has this silent but very effective way of staying connected and transforming each other and keeping each other alive, even after a tree has been cut down. It continues sending signals of life. And that reminds me so much about disabled survival and about how underground organizing is so necessary to our care work, to being able to care for each other, to uplift each other, to stay alive and connected, and to remind one another that just like trees, we have this power, we get so rooted and at the same time we branch out and reach out to the sky and you know, trees are amazing and so are disabled people and how everything is so connected. And I want to thank both of my fellow panelists for like covering the previous question, because honestly, you left me speechless. I don't know what else to say. So check.
Oh, thank you so much, Maria. I wish we had time to dive into so much, but thank you for that imagery of the tree. That is gonna stick with me. It was yeah, so real. So let's go a bit deeper. We know, as we've spoken about, care work is shaped by systems of power and oppression, right? That run through every aspect of our lives. Systems like ableism, racism, capitalism are embedded in the way that care relationships are structured. These systems shape, as we've spoken about, who gets care, who provides the care, and how is that care valued or undervalued. And to help ground us in the next question, I wanted to take a moment just to define capitalism a little bit, because it's at the heart of many of these systems. And so capitalism is an economic system where everything, including people's times, bodies, minds, care, and survival, is treated as something that can be bought, sold, and profited from. In capitalism, people who can work in ways that create profit are valued more, while folks who can't, like many disabled folks, are often treated as less worthy, less visible, and disposable. And understanding some of these dynamics is really essential if we're gonna start to unpack and address the exploitation that exists in care, that exists in our world, that connects us all. And so the next question is, what role does ableism, racism, capitalism play in shaping care relationships? And I really want to focus on how can both care workers, employers work together to dismantle it? So really focusing on the action piece. Thanks. And I will start with Maria.
Thank you. Actually, I appreciate you starting with me because
You're right. Thank you, Maria. I'm starting with Guadalupe. I appreciate that. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Lo siento, ya iba a hablar en inglés, no sé por qué en mi experiencia como trabajando y organizando con y para trabajadoras del hogar, escuchando sus historias, no solamente cuando las asistimos uno a uno, pero también durante nuestras reuniones semanales que tenemos, porque trabajamos mucho en asegurar que ellas conozcan cuáles son sus derechos laborales. Y entre más ellas escuchan, ellas se dan cuenta que sus derechos laborales han sido violados, que han sufrido explotación. Y una de las cosas que me viene a la mente y que siento que tiene la raíz de mucho de lo que ellas viven es el racismo. Cuando son contratadas especialmente por dueños de casa que son millonarios, hemos escuchado historias de artistas de Hollywood que han contratado a trabajadoras y no les han pagado su salario, que las tienen trabajando horas extras. Hemos escuchado historias de millonarios que tienen tantas propiedades y no pueden pagar o no quieren pagar un salario para una trabajadora del hogar. Entonces, esos nosotros los identificamos como malos empleadores y es un término que usamos internamente, ¿verdad? Decir, es un empleador que te está contratando y sabe que está violando las leyes laborales y aún así decide continuar haciéndolo porque piensa que no tienes derechos. Y muchas trabajadoras lo que escuchan de estos empleadores es, eres ilegal, que es una palabra muy fuerte decírselo a una persona indocumentada, ¿verdad? Eres ilegal, no tienes derechos y porque estás aquí ilegalmente no tienes derechos laborales. Y si tú haces algo en contra de mí, entonces yo voy a hablarle a la migra para que te manden a tu país. Entonces, este tipo de amenazas y este tipo de acciones que estos empleadores hacen en contra de estas trabajadoras basado en su estatus migratorio, ¿verdad? Las deja no solamente de manos atadas, porque por otro lado, es muy difícil para ellas decir, voy a dejar este trabajo porque no me pagan bien o porque me están tratando mal, porque aunque ellas reconocen esa parte, también hay una necesidad muy grande y especialmente ahorita con la economía que tenemos, ¿verdad? No hay trabajos, no hay muchos trabajos a los que ellas puedan aplicar. Ellas tienen el temor ahora de continuar buscando trabajos porque ya les quieren pedir también la documentación. ¿Cómo van a comprobar todo eso? Entonces, hay muchas cosas que a ellas las limitan y las atan de manos. Y ellas en sus palabras lo dicen. Yo sé que no está bien lo que mi empleador hace, pero no puedo perder la oportunidad de tener dinero para pagar la renta, para llevar comida a mi casa o para comprar medicamentos. Entonces, las convencen de que merecen, entre comillas, salarios miserables. Las convencen de que porque no hablan inglés, el trabajo que ellas hacen no vale. Entonces, algo que pudieran hacer trabajadoras y empleadores sería, uno, saber cuáles son sus derechos laborales, pero no solamente las trabajadoras, sino también las personas que contratan trabajadoras, ¿verdad? Que sepan cuáles son los derechos laborales de una trabajadora del hogar. Que cuando hagan la contratación, lo hagan a través de un contrato escrito, que hablen, que escriban bajo cuáles condiciones va a trabajar para esta persona, cuáles son las tareas que van a hacer. Muchas de estas trabajadoras son contratadas inicialmente para trabajar jornadas de 8 horas, 5 días a la semana, y muchas veces terminan trabajando jornadas de 10 a 12 horas, trabajando incluso fines de semanas por el mismo salario. Y no hace nada, especialmente en este momento político, porque el hecho que a ellas les digan sobre su estatus migratorio es un riesgo muy alto que ellas saben que están corriendo y están haciendo un trabajo bajo unas condiciones inhumanas y de explotación. Entonces, información, educación, siento que es algo que definitivamente ayudaría, porque por otro lado, sabemos que hay empleadores que quisieran, ¿verdad?, decir, ¿cómo puedo hacer las cosas bien? ¿Cómo puedo asegurar que cuando yo contrato a alguien no estoy abusando de la persona y estamos en términos donde ambas partes se van a beneficiar? Porque eso es lo ideal. Se beneficia el empleador y se beneficia la trabajadora. Entonces, mucho del trabajo que hacemos es con trabajadoras del hogar, pero estamos también tratando de conectar con empleadores. Y ahí es donde nuestras compañeras de la organización Mano a Mano, ¿verdad? Han estado de alguna manera apoyándonos y esperamos continuar trabajando con ellas mucho más, porque sí creemos que puede haber una conexión y una relación saludable de respeto, pero especialmente de dignidad para ambas partes. Gracias.
Yeah.
Britt, you are muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Thank you. My computer's freezing, and so I'm just going to leave my mic on then. I was just saying, thank you so much, Guadalupe. You gave so many great ways that we can show up for domestic workers, providing, safe and healthy working conditions, knowing your rights, not being exploitative. And I really appreciated the ways that you highlighted that ableism and, racism and immigration, and so many other things are interconnected. I so appreciate that. I'm gonna invite Vasilia to speak next.
We'll make it quick, Brittany. I know you're trying to get us going. I just have 3 quick points to contribute to what Guadalupe is saying. First of all, I think that in order to, on the topic of capitalism, how it's screwing over everyone, how do we recognize our struggles are together, and have a united front? Like, I think you can't understand that without basically like historically diagnosing the situation and like talking about eugenics as like the structural force that has shaped the healthcare institutions and the education institutions that are like criminalizing disablement and disabling people in real time and profiting off of both the disablement and the criminalization. So for instance, I worked in public schools for many years as a substitute teacher and as a classroom assistant in autism rooms, which is a whole other thing, how our systems are all segregated, especially education systems, and it compounds disablement and exploitation. But the point is that a lot of my students were like from immigrant refugee families, were, for instance, Somali first gen folks who were nonverbal because they're autistic and because they were war refugee survivors. And like their families didn't want to sign up for state systems, or if you have your once a year meeting with your caseworker who says, how are things going? And the family says, things are fine. Then your single mom has to keep working overnight construction shifts to make ends meet instead of being paid in the first place to hang out with her kid more than she would be making at she's getting paid half as much as she could be being paid as a caregiver through the state. So pretty much by first and second grade, all of my students are either being tracked as you're a problem kid who's going to be violent any second, and they are being basically criminalized and put on a certain track, or they're getting IEPs because their parents or somebody has advocated with them and their loved ones are being paid to spend time with them. And so from a very, very young age, disabled people are funneled and their families. And if you're a working class family, you're also being criminalized and shuttled either down a services route where your family's getting paid and you're getting services and people are looking out for you in school, or And it's a double-edged sword, because if you sign up for, if you take on the diagnoses and the labels of disability, then when your kid does act out later, if you're a Black and brown autistic kid, it's much easier for the state to snatch those people into captivity. So a lot of parents rightfully don't want these labels. However, they can't make ends meet. So it's this double-edged sword that is completely unfair to criminalize or like marginalize and communities already targeted for disablement and captivity. And so, yeah, basically my points are we have to talk about eugenics, because also the eugenics movement that sought to remove people from society who were undesirable for any reason. So a lot of developmental, disabled folks, immigrant, like a lot of people were just labeled as like, and it's the thing that exists today where it's like, yeah, we want to get rid of you, but we also need you, and all of our profits depend on owning your body, right? Like somehow we're like, yeah, let's get rid of those ones, but also like I need to exploit you in order to make money. So we're actually like the backbone of all the profits, turns out. Anyways, so but like the point is that unless we recognize that, and by the way, all of those eugenic systems rebranded as treatment, right? Same institution, but now they're like, no, we're doing healthcare now. We are a care center, we are a treatment center. So something I always talk to my friends in other movement spaces about is like, y'all, they just rebrand as treatment and they do the same stuff, but unless you can see through those tricks, because we're working together, like, like we're going to abolish prisons, but we're going to have a whole bunch more treatment centers or we're going to disappear all the folks in prisons into in-home care that looks like a house from the outside, but on the inside, it's just as abusive, just as locked up, you can't go anywhere. And in a lot of cases, there's actually more profits if you guys it as healthcare, because you can bill for a whole bunch more billing items, and you can disappear people more easily because there's fewer legal loopholes if someone is labeled as psychiatric. This person can't make their own decisions. So actually they don't, there's way fewer legal steps and oversight. So that's my point, is that, care strategy is full of these risks for communities that are already the most vulnerable. But I think it's the only way for us to win is to have a coherent cross-movement care strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for expanding on that as well. And we have a little bit of time left, and I do want to get to some Q&A. And Maria, I'm wondering what wonderful brilliance you have to offer, and then we'll go to Q&A and closing.
Thank you. I'll make it super quick. I personally, when we talk about ableism, I am personally convinced that ableism itself is at the core and at the root of all oppression that disabled people experience, like no exception. And some people might think I'm exaggerating, especially non-disabled people, but at the beginning of the year, a year ago, I told myself, I'm going to keep a journal of every single time that I encounter ableism, whatever it may be, something I hear, something I feel, I witness, whatever. And I started, and let me tell you, I lasted like maybe a week because it became so overwhelming. I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I ended up with like pages and pages of situations of, we tend to tune it out as a way to survive, as a way of caring for ourselves. We tend to like normalize certain things, but ableism is, affects all of our relationships. It affects our relationship with family, our relationship with spirituality, our relationship with the world in general. I mean, ableism, when you're disabled, again, I dare say, is at the core of our oppression. And when it comes to care work, one of the most damaging things that it does, it is denying us body ownership. It makes us believe that needing care is automatically making us either a burden, or it gives the non-disabled people caring for our bodies the right to decide for us. So it takes away body autonomy and other kinds of decision-making power because of ableism. It makes the non-disabled fear us. it supports the structural oppression that weighs upon us. You know, ableism is evil, and I could talk forever about ableism, but I think that my fellow panelists have like done a wonderful job covering, you know, everything that I would have probably said. So I don't want to like reinvent the wheel here. I just wanted to bring my perspective as a disabled person and how it feels. You know, when we talk about ableism and how it shows up in our relationships. And another thing that it does is that it places capitalist expectations of productivity upon us, making us believe that we can't or shouldn't or don't deserve to be part of the labor world. So, you know, there's a lot more that we could say, but in reality, ableism affects us all. It affects the non-disabled too, because it deprives the world of our beauty and our wisdom. It takes away the opportunity of showing off our wholeness and our power. So yeah, ableism is at the core of all our oppression as disabled people. And part of battling and dismantling it is naming it and calling it and taking responsibility for our privilege, because all of us have privilege, even those of us who are mostly oppressed. You know, I think that recognizing our personal privilege adds to our power, and to the way that we battle ableism. So anyway, I could keep talking and talking, but I'm not going to.
Oh, Maria, thank you so much. It's so real, and ableism impacts those that are not yet disabled, right? As a friend, Jillian would say, you know, disability is one of the only groups that is for open enrollment, right?
Mhm.
And so it's also this inability to see, or this refusal to acknowledge that disability is a part of the human experience that also upholds all these systems, that also strengthens all these systems, all these other, you know, roots of the same tree, that start long before we're even born, right? And this fucked up algorithm that we're all like working to break. Excuse my language. Okay, thank you. Hey everyone, my computer cut me off. But what I was trying to get at is really just saying thank you for everyone for being here. I did want to take time to answer a question or two. Let's see here if my computer is working, or actually, could I invite Mika to help us facilitate some of those questions? Don't want my computer to freeze. Thank you.
You know, we're actually running out of time, so I wonder if you or the panelists want to do a closing, and unfortunately, we'll have to get to the questions another time, and I can leave it to you, and I'll just take the last 15 seconds or so.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that there's a way that we can maybe answer these questions post webinar as well. But I appreciate everyone's patience as we navigate this. There's so much important information too, so it's hard to wade through sometimes, but thank you again for being here. I wanted to invite you to join us for the next workshop in this series, which is called My Home is Someone's Workplace. It's happening on April 30th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. PT. And in this workshop, we're going to build on the things that we've been talking about, but put it in a very practical way. We're going to teach you how to build respectful care relationships, understand your legal obligations, create work agreements, and so much more. So we're going to put the link in the chat for you to register. And there's many opportunities to get involved with the work that we're doing at Hand in Hand to help creating this employer and worker solidarity, and so much more. So there's some spaces that I will invite you to post workshop as well. The last thing that I wanted to mention is that tomorrow we are taking collective action. We are going to be hosting a power hour to defend Medicaid, which we've spoken a little bit about. And as many of you know, Medicaid funds home care and health care for so many of us. So we're going to be calling on constituents in a very important district in California to help mobilize and defend for Medicaid. So we'll put that link on there in there as well. And Just taking a breath again. And thank you so much to all of our incredible panelists for sharing their wisdom. Thank you for all of you for being a part of this conversation. And of course, this discussion is just one piece of the pie, right? And as we've spoken about, care connects all of our movements, and that our survival requires solidarity. So when we show up for care workers, we're showing up for ourselves, we're showing up for our communities, and we are paving a path, I truly believe, for a future where dignity, respect, and justice are granted for all people with no body mind left behind. Okay, Mika, turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Britt. And thank you to our wonderful panelists. This was such a rich, beautiful conversation, and I hope a lot of you will join us for the partner event that Britt mentioned. Thank you to our wonderful partner Hand in Hand, and for support from the City of San Francisco's Human Service Agency's Department of Aging Services. Thank you also to our phenomenal access team, and thanks for being with us. We will see you next time.